Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you're here for the first time, this is part of our digital transformation series for which we meet every Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We pick one topic related to digital transformation, and we always have an expert panel here. So for today, we have a very interesting topic for marketers. It's going to be the top KPIs for marketers. I think marketers live in that world, so we are going to have a lot of fun discussing that. Before we dig into the topic, we are going to start with everybody's intros. I am going to start with my quick intro, if you don't know me. Sam Gupta, principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm. On that note, I am going to move to Chris Harrington for his intro.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, her intro, sorry.
So great to be here with everybody. Yes, I'm Chris Harrington, the CEO of Gen Alpha Technologies, and we help original equipment manufacturers sell and service their parts and equipment online. So great to be here with everybody today.
Thank you so much for being here, Chris. And not only we have the Chris and Chris problem, now we have the gender problem as well. Chris, can I move to you next for your intro, Cristiano?
Thanks, Sam. Chris Gherardini. I'm the president and owner of Turnkey Technologies. Been implementing Dynamics ERP solutions for 30 years now. And, marketing is a big topic because, the front end of the process, it's all about customer acquisition. So key part of the process. Look forward to talking about it.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Chris. And Dave, I don't know, now you call yourself marketer or still the manufacturing consultant? Because you must be a seasoned marketer by now.
Should I go put my marketing hat on? I mean, I would like to say, Sam, this is WBS Rocks episode 547. So I feel like you being an expert marketer in your own right, we need to throw a little bit of that to you. But hey, everyone, my name is Dave Griffith. I run a company called Kaplan Solutions. We mostly focus on manufacturing and industrial clients on the OT side, so the plant floor side, helping them understand what their processes are and helping them run their processes in a more profitable way. Outside of that, I do a fair amount of marketing myself, and I'm excited to talk about what important marketing KPIs are and how we can actually achieve those.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being here, Dave. By the way, I may have 540 episode or whatever, but KPI is something I'm yet to master. So one of these days, probably after 5,000 episodes, I'll probably know my KPIs. Thank you so much for being here, Dave. Abu, can I ask you to introduce yourself next?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think 5,048 is a KPI in itself, right?
Exactly.
You don't need any other KPIs. Hi everyone, my name's Abu. Lead a group here called Penny. We're a Sage X3 partner. Work with a wide variety of industry, helping their internal business processes. Over the last couple of years, we have also worked quite a bit on our marketing and revamped and process-wise and system-wise. Excited to be here and talk more about marketing KPIs.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Abu. And if you're in the audience and joining for the first time, make sure you guys post your questions and comments. We typically try to cover them during the show. And if we run out of time, then we'll make sure one of our panelists is going to, get back to you with your answers. On that note, Chris Harrington, I'm going to start with you. Obviously, the first segment, we start with the top KPIs for marketing. I think there's going to be a ton to talk about overall. I guess there is always going to be a mix-up between your sales and marketing alignment. And then based on that alignment, I think you can figure out the KPIs. Your organizations are not going to be aligned. I don't know how KPIs are going to work. So, Chris, over to you. Anything that you might be able to share from the top KPIs perspective for CMOs?
Yeah, thank you. You just threw so much right there, because sales and marketing alignment is probably something we could talk a lot about, but maybe that will kind of come out through this. I certainly am putting on my marketing hat, but I'm going to also leverage my CEO hat, because I think that as a CEO, you have to be thinking about the very narrow metrics that you want from marketing, because we all know that there are so many metrics we can track in marketing. And I really just want to mention that I think that it is important to be tracking a lot of metrics, but more specifically, trends related to those. So the top KPIs that I would talk about are certainly revenue and marketing generated revenue. So I think that depending on the business you are, what your goals are, what you sell, you have to sometimes separate your inbound versus your outbound activities and measure your revenue from both of those. So I do think the inbound and the outbound separation is really critical. And you might have questions on follow-up, but I'll just keep going through there. The next metric that I wrote down that I think is really critical is pipeline contribution from marketing. So often that will be in the form of inbound, so that there is an intent to buy that comes through typically your website, and it captures information on a next step, whether that be they want to hear more about your product, they want a demonstration of your product. That can be a physical product, or it can be a technology product, or they actually want to book a call with you. So in the marketing space, we're often trying to create those opportunities. And when we can have a qualified opportunity like that turn into pipeline, we want to measure that. So then we also want to talk about pipeline velocity. So the difference between somebody that comes in through a marketing qualified situation, how fast does it move through the pipeline versus your outbound sales activity. So I'm really trying to decipher here some sales versus marketing things as I'm talking about this. And then, I always throw this into a KPI where sales and marketing are involved, and that's market share growth. I really think that you should be measuring that. It's typically not something you're measuring in the short term, but it's something that you could be measuring annually. You want to make sure that you're improving your market share over time, because you could be increasing your revenue, but if all things being equal, if everything's up, but your competitors are taking more market share, you need to know that. So market share growth is an important one. Customer acquisition costs is really critical in marketing. That's really taking all of your sales and marketing costs and dividing it by the number of customers in a period. That's going to give you your customer acquisition costs. So we certainly want to be measuring that. Those are 4 that I would say are the top leaders for me.
Okay, amazing insights there. So I am going to touch on some of these topics, as well as, the opinions, I guess, that are going to be very prevalent in the marketing community. Okay, so marketing generated revenue obviously is great. And Chris, Dave, a lot of you, most of you are probably involved in the thought leadership. And I think we all collectively have had this sort of argument that the moment you start sort of coming across as tracking something, then you are going to come across as very salesy. And then your thought leadership is probably not going to work, because people are going to think that you are probably trying to sell something, right? So in my mind, marketing is very much about the education in general, the way marketing should be working. Yes, you are going to get a lot of inbound leads. There is no question about that. Thought leadership works. That's why, especially for, businesses such as consulting, it's definitely very true. But, for marketers, it's very hard for them to manage the expectations in general, because obviously in my case, I never want to be a marketer, to be honest. That is probably the hardest job in general. Okay, when you have to create the results, it becomes very, very, very hard in how to do that. So unless you are doing the pure play, outbound, then you probably can do something. But if you are really building the thought leadership, it becomes very hard. And I'm going to bring one more topic related to dark social. And I don't know how much you guys have been tracking. And I think these guys have been talking about dark social, and which is like, and that is so real, to be honest. It works. Okay. but you have to have the right strategy. And I don't know how to track that. I don't know if anybody has sort of figured out to track that. So any follow-up commentary, Chris, you might have based on my comments, any build-up?
Yeah. Well, I think, you're talking about thought leadership. I really think that we have to have content that is value-based and customer-focused. And that is really critical. And if we do that well, hopefully we're meeting customers early in a buying journey, or they are recognizing us as a leader in a space, and we catch them potentially early in a process versus responding to them. And, if we do, and they are engaged with our content, and we'll call that marketing, then they are going to themselves take action, and they are going to come to you, and they're going to fill out the forms, and they're going to do the different things. In the dark social space, the things that I've listened to and read is that's where you can have a simple question on your website that says, how did you hear about us? Yeah. And through that, if it's an open text field, they can fill in things like LinkedIn, podcast, webinar. And that's where you can start to understand how your value-based marketing, how your customer-focused marketing is starting to work for you. And hopefully, those are higher intent situations that will quickly move to a close. And that's that velocity that I was talking about. The hope is that your sales team isn't chasing something that really isn't real, that there was a lead that dropped, but there was no intent behind the lead. They're chasing something that didn't exist. This is good intent that comes in, and you work to speed up that close or the sales cycle that we talk about.
Could not agree more. Great points, Chris. Thank you so much. So, Chris, Cristiano, I'm going to move to you. One layer that I want to touch based on, Chris's comment, and then you might have either counter agreement, disagreement, whatever you might have. So, yes, that is one way of tracking dark social, okay? That you might have an option on the website. But typically, let's say if a lead is going to come to a salesperson, the salesperson is going to claim, I found it. It might be the work of the marketer for the last year, and then the salesperson finds it. Obviously, the salesperson is going to get the credit, or whoever finds it, they are going to get the credit. So I'm not too sure if you can track everything from the thought leadership perspective, and that's when it becomes really tricky overall in terms of what is trackable in marketing and what is not.
Sure.
Chris, over to you. Any sort of KPIs from your
Yeah, I'll give you some background though. I appreciate your perspective, and you're right. To catch an attribute on a website and plug it in as a campaign, but my background is I was fortunate enough to land in the late '80s with a home improvement company that had a primitive database technology. So I was the one that composed all their marketing analytics. So 30 years later, it's interesting. You look at campaign effectiveness, and you're basically coming back to how do we attribute whatever to something quantitatively. And everybody goes, what's that mean? It's not I think that's mine. I stole it. I ripped it off. But and so Sam's point is about lead sourcing. And as you go back to the macro, and again, I'm a CMO. What am I looking at? Am I the $1 billion guy? And if I'm looking at campaign effectiveness, and again, we used to categorize. And you think about direct mail. There's still a lot of paper being generated. Direct mail, telemarketing, events, canvassing, right? Knocking on doors, referrals, web. So major categories, but if you go micro, and so at a major category, and if you think about those as being dimensions, I like dimensions, and I'm the CMO, and I'm looking at campaign effectiveness, cost effectiveness. That's all the way at the end of the analytics, meaning, right, we had raw, how many came in, how many, were they marketing qualified, sales qualified, whatever. But, depending on the source, there's different columns as we move through from left to right, and all the way on the right is a closed piece of business, right, that contributes to that cost effectiveness. So at a macro level, based on different types of campaigns that we can run, where am I at macro? Click. Okay, now I'm looking at events. And again, if we're capturing costs, and I'm the accounting system guy, right? So we're capturing cost. We've got campaigns. We measure that. And so your comment comes back to, okay, somebody's putting a lead in the system. That means, is it manually being entered, or is it electronically captured? Okay, so if we're electronically capturing, again, we can really do a good job of track, trace. And now what site did you get to my site from? Okay, I get the twice removed. But to that point, it's still, to your point, capturing these attributes accurately as possible. Sales rep gets it. If he's keying it in, all right, where did it come from? Was it an email and you decided to type it in? I don't know. It gets interesting, but you still have to rely on your team because, again, as we go back to CMO, spend analytics. Chris, you're on velocity. We got a lot of other ones, KPIs, but I'm over on the front end where if I'm measuring, $100 million in marketing spend, okay, where do I allocate that money? And now if I had those major categories, well, where am I doing better by geography? And then we start bringing in some product mix. And, the marketing guy is going to have some really interesting analytics as he compares what are the top 20 products by region. Okay, well, who's not buying what? And so if you think about how do you drive real revenue and manage cost, right? Because campaign spend is set 100 million. Velocity, how much velocity do I need to pay for this stuff? Well, there's a different analytic, right, Chris? I'm like, no, dude, you're way below what we need in terms of, so now we can set benchmarks based on spend analytics. And again, I know it's an integrated process. And so, most people don't have great systems, but it's accurate lead capture and source tracking and subsource. Those are my components and dimensions. And based on that, you can analyze this lead came in 6 months. What's my stat? A year later, what's my stat? Because we know that we used to pin a lead, not look at leads coming in and results in a period that are disconnected, but leads and looking at the life cycle of the lead where campaign effectiveness could change over time. In meaning, does it take 18 months to close these things or 9 months? And so even those analytics where you look at, okay, what's my deal cycle? And again, I mentioned the industry thing. It's different, right? These were home improvements. We're selling to retail customers. We go to commercial, right? Industrial distributors. Again, you're going to have some different spins on that. But again, mine was really the big campaign out. It was spend. But like I said, there's so many important things to track at a macro level. And then to be able to, what's working? How do we do more of that here, right? What do we do good? Do more of that. What do we do bad? Do less or fix it and analyze. And then, okay, it works now do more. But like I said, that's still macro and it still needs that micro, but just a couple examples.
Yeah, could not agree more. And great insights overall from the macro and micro perspective. I guess, macro and micro has been Chris's favorite topic from the accounting perspective. Now he's bringing the same insight in the marketing as well, which is wonderful.
Everywhere. You need the data to see it. You need to see it. But you don't need to see it up front. You need a graph and go, well, what's that little button? Oh, really? Click. Interesting. That's what the CMO needs. Click, 3 clicks. I got right to what happened here. What's the conversion rate on marketing leads to opportunities? Well, why? You get it? Is that a problem with the sales team? Is it probably the marketing team? Quick diagnostic based on good data.
Yeah, could not agree more. Thank you so much, Cristiano, for those insights. Dave, I'm coming to you. And now we are talking about, we have spoken a little bit about, dark social and, you being the podcast host, I being the podcast host. And even after 500 episodes, okay, people come to me and they are going to ask me, okay, how many leads can you generate? And I'm like, okay, I'm not too sure. How many have you generated so far? Not too sure. I don't know anything about KPIs. Don't ask me anything about KPIs, okay?
Sam doesn't know anything about KPIs, but has devoted this entire year to talking about nothing but KPIs. So at the end of the year, Sam, we're going to just listen to you talk about KPIs for at least one entire episode, all by yourself.
Please do that. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so I think there have been a lot of really good points brought up. And I guess my general theory about KPIs is we should get as granular as possible, but at some point it's just not worth getting any closer, any more granular. So Chris talked about the one company that he helped kind of go track conversions through the entirety of the sales process. And honestly, I love that. And if every company, if customers were that important to them, they should absolutely go track every contact that they've had. And, we see lots of people doing it with CRMs and ERPs and other tools along those lines. But I think for most organizations, that's not super realistic. Or maybe for most organizations that I've worked with, that's not super realistic because we've got marketing doing one thing and we've got blog doing another thing. Maybe we've got podcasts or maybe we're doing videos and then we're sending people to trade shows. And is that a marketing thing or is that a sales thing? And then maybe we've got people arm wrestling as to whose lead is what, right? So I think it's important to understand what you're doing and generally kind of to Chris's initial point of velocity, like what are we doing? Are we moving kind of that market share in the direction that we are looking to do? So I work with a bunch of kind of large organizations on the podcast side, right? And so my question to those marketing people is like, what is important to you? And sometimes it's leads, right? Like sometimes for smaller companies, they want, 2, 3, 5 people to call them or drop them a message saying, hey, I'm interested in your product. And that is a win for them. I work with some larger ones and they're looking at tens of thousands or more of views on the shows because we've got their logos up there, and that's what's important to them. So I think it really depends what's important to the specific organization, and that almost comes down to what are the marketers being judged on. I think the goal should be kind of some combination thereof, right? We need to continue to increase brand awareness. We want people to come to look at our website, to go look at our shows, to kind of do all of these things. And we want to be considered thought leaders. I don't know of any group that says, hey, I'm going to go become a thought leader today or this week or this month or this year. It's a long process, as Sam will be able to tell you from all of the shows that he has put on, right? But it's a long process in which you have to go talk about things and go actually do and deploy some of these things to get to the point of people looking up to you. I would also say it really depends upon the size and type of organization that you are, right? So if you're selling software as a service, you may go send out an email campaign or you may go send out something. And if it's $10 a month, someone may show up to your website the first time and you're like, oh, this is the service I'm looking for. I wish I knew about it 6 months ago, but I'm going to go spend $10 a month or $80 for the entirety of the year. That makes sense. And I think we see a lot of those kind of on the more consumer goods side. We go and you buy a coffee or a coffee cup or something like that, and you don't particularly think twice about it. But if you're looking to go deploy $100 million worth of manufacturing line and a whole bunch of equipment, or you're going to look to deploy an ERP, that absolutely gets into the, hey, we probably have to talk to them twice or 10 times or 17 times or 200 times before they get to the point of actually getting to the sales cycle and being ready to go say, yes, this is what we want. This is what we need to do. We've got the CapEx or the OpEx or both monies budgeted in order to be able to get to the next level. So I think it's really dependent upon what you're selling as to when we look at that. And I think that we've got a bunch of really good KPIs. One that we didn't particularly talk about is conversion rate. So I like the concept of conversion rate, right? Looking at impressions, but we also have to understand what we're selling and how many touches are going to be in the sales cycle. That's why I think Chris's initial point of market share and market share growth, along with pipeline and revenue, are some of the easiest ones. And I guess the last point on CMO KPIs, as I think of as a marketer, what sort of KPIs I want. I honestly like marketers are the ones that I'm not even joking, want all 5,000, right? We want like 5,000 different metrics. We want to see them all on a dashboard. And then I want to see them daily. I want to see them weekly. I want to see them monthly and quarterly. I want to see them year over year. I want to know where I am today versus last year versus projections. So those marketers, especially with so many great digital tools that we have today, are absolutely going to do their very best to leverage the technology that we have available.
Yeah, great insights there. And by the way, MEC, now you know why I put these topics, right? So we have 100 KPI topics because I'm the one who does not know anything about KPI. So I'm putting these topics for myself. Hopefully, by the time I finish 100, I'll know something about KPIs. So, so good one there. And by the way, all of the layers that you have provided, I absolutely love that because typically in most of the episodes that I've done, people don't cover all of those layers, and they all are going to be equally important. I think you touched on size, type, as well as the product. The conversion rate, I was thinking that, Chris was going to touch because she's the commerce person, and that's probably going to be the golden, KPI for the conversion rate. But one of the things that have not been, brought up so far, and I don't know if Abu is going to bring in, but I'll still bring that up so that we can touch that, is going to be role, okay? So when you look at CMO, mm-hmm. They have a very specific responsibility. In fact, if you look at the marketing organization, the way they are created, some of the marketers, you don't even want to talk about KPIs with them. Okay, otherwise they're not going to work with you. As simple as that. They are creators. Okay, mm-hmm. They don't care. They don't like to talk about money. Like developers. I mean, if you're going to talk about money and KPIs, good luck in working with them. Okay. That's not going to fly with them. Okay. So again, it gets very interesting. So from the CMO's perspective, I think the KPIs that we are looking for, Jay, were from the CMO perspective. So I guess, that's going to be a macro perspective. That's probably going to be more relevant for CMOs as opposed to the. So I don't know if you're going to have any sort of insights on the role. Dave, over to you again.
I was going to say, I think that is generally very realistic, right? So creative folks, developers, things like that generally don't want to talk about money. At some point it becomes a business and you have to talk about money, right? Like it may even be a creator saying, hey, I don't like to talk about money, but maybe this is my one package, take it or leave it. Or it may be a creator saying, hey, I don't like to talk about money, but go talk to my business manager or whomever. They go deal with all of those. So I absolutely agree. I think that the key point is finding ways to align everyone's interest. If that's saying, hey, I'm willing to pay X number of dollars up front, and if we hit, 100,000 views on this, then there's a bonus. Or every 10,000 views above 30,000, there's a bonus, or something like that. I think the goal is, how do we align everyone's interests in the business interest? And the business interest is generally creating more buzz, more thought leadership, more influence, more market share.
Yeah, great insights. Cristiano, do you have any comment? I mean, I know you're probably joking there.
He said more money is what I said. They need all that stuff plus more money.
Exactly,
more money.
Exactly. So Abu, I'm coming over to you, and on one comment related to the creators, I guess. So creators do like to talk about money when it is going to be about their paychecks. Okay. So if you ask me, okay, you are the world famous podcaster. Okay, let's talk about money. So I'm going to be really interested in talking about my pay rate. Okay, I'm not going to work with you unless you pay me $100,000. Okay, but when you are going to ask about leads, then I'm not interested in talking about that. So that's how typically the conversation goes. So Abu, I don't know, as CMO, what you are going to do, what kind of KPIs you are going to have, so that you can work with the best creators, because best creators, they are very hard to find in general. And some of these things like, brand identity, visual identity, some people are really good. Like,
Yeah, I mean, and it's a difficult thing, right? I mean, you go to any marketing agency, and you talk about KPIs, or how many leads you promised me in a month. You increase the time horizon to a year. Even still, they're reluctant to give you any numbers, right? So they like to talk more in a general, vaguer sense, right? I'm going to increase your impressions, and that's ultimately going to generate more leads. I think from that perspective, what marketing really builds is the brand equity, right? One way to measure, is the marketing working for you, is, are you able to charge more, right? Because your brand value increases, right? Even though sometimes it may be hard where the lead came from, was it from sales or was it from marketing? But ultimately, people do check out your marketing, right? Even if the sales got a lead, they'll go to your website, they'll look at your thought leadership, they'll look at your podcast, and that marketing will influence the ultimate end sale, right? And oftentimes, if you're a thought leader, you can definitely charge more than the average compared to your other customers or competitors. I think that would be one metric as a company. If my marketing is working, then over time I should be able to have a higher price for my services uh, compared to my competition. In terms of tracking, a lot of digital tools have made it really easy. Like in the older days, you had to mail something out, it took 5 days to get the mail. Somebody opened the mailbox in 5 days and then took a coupon code to the retailer or somewhere else, and then use that coupon code. And then probably it takes a month, 2 months before you can do any analytics, right? With the digital tools, you can get analytics next day. How many people saw you, how many got converted. And there are lots of, if you're doing Google, LinkedIn, everybody throws a lot of metrics at you, right? So common one would be, are your followers going up, right? Are your impression rates going up? Are more people watching your videos? How many impressions are you getting? What's your conversion between the impressions to the actual sign up, and then to actual a sales qualified lead? One other metric which looks at a higher level and is a good metric, is probably easier to measure, is how many new customers you acquired based on your marketing and sales spend, right? Is your Ideally, you want your cost per acquisition of a customer to go down over time, right? If your cost per acquisition is going up, that means you have to rethink about your marketing. Some of those more creative things that they are very hard to measure, right? It's you can do the best creative ad, doesn't mean you're going to get sales next month, right? Depends on the industry also. I mean, if you're on the B2C, like you're targeting consumers, it may make a difference. But more B2B, then those creative ads are way more harder to develop KPIs long term. From that perspective, other time would be, what's the customer lifetime value? You bring in a customer, how much revenue that is generating. Um, how long you're retaining the customer for. For that, also the ops comes in, but again, having a better brand probably makes the customer stick for longer. So that would be some of the other high-level KPIs.
Yeah, great insights. And price increase is probably a great point, to be honest. Again, I have always been thinking about, okay, I probably need to increase my price. And the reason why listeners might not be listening to this show is because I'm throwing away my price for free. So maybe I need to be charging now so that I can get a lot more audience.
A lot of marketers, they'll say, give something for free. My perspective is totally different. If you're getting something for free, there's zero value attached to it, right? You're not giving up anything in return. So, especially in our world, it's really, I haven't seen it convert much, the free practice. So.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, there are always going to be debates about what works for the thought leadership. Obviously, if it is going to be paid, then you are going to have very limited audience in general. And if you build the audience, then obviously you can charge them a lot because you have built the exclusive community. But not many people will know about you, I guess. So depending upon what is the goal of what you are trying to accomplish. So I don't know, Abu, I'll touch on some more points here, and maybe if you're going to have any sort of follow-up. I think you already mentioned the industry. That is always the most important part in terms of the KPIs. One of the things, I don't know if you guys have touched, maybe indirectly, not directly, is going to be always the deal size in my mind. If the deal size dictates what is going to be your conversion rate, what kind of KPIs you are going to get. So the more expensive the deal is going to be, the whole process is going to be very different. And the other factor that in my experience matters is going to be the number of decision makers involved. A lot of us play in the ERP category. When you are selling at the department level, different ball game, different play. Okay. And when you are shaking the foundation of an organization selling something like ERP, even if you are selling for $10,000, okay, that's a big deal. So your KPIs are going to be very different in general. So Abu, any follow-ups, any build-up, any agreement, disagreements?
I think what really impacts those complicated higher deal value sales is the time frame, right? It's going to take the length. It's going to take more time to make the deal.
Yeah.
I think from a standard, the KPIs, in my opinion, would still remain the same, right? You still have to touch, create certain number of impressions. You may have to create more impressions to generate a deal. But those KPI would still stay the same. You have to still reach a certain number of people, how many demos you're doing in a month, for example, for ERP sales, and that ultimately should give you, results, right? But if you're not, so in my opinion, it's still fairly, the same. The metric would still be the same for regardless of the deal size or the complexity. The time frame changes. You may not get 100,000 impressions, but you still need to track the impressions, right, for that. So.
Yeah, great points. Thank you so much, Abu, for that. So Chris Harrington, I'm coming over to you again. And I think,
Yes.
E-commerce is always going to be a very different beast in general. And, let's talk a little bit about e-commerce, because obviously we need to touch that as well. And in general, the e-commerce industry is the role of CMO differs a lot in my mind. It's a very different role. If you are going to compare that role with, let's say, a healthcare CMO, software CMO, or any of the professional services organization, they have very different processes. E-commerce is a different ball game in general. And by the way, depending upon who you are selling to, are you selling to the net new customers, or are you selling to your existing customers? Sometimes you might be selling to your channels customers. So there are a lot of different layers there overall in terms of your marketing strategy. So I don't know, whatever perspective you are going to have from the e-commerce perspective, Chris.
Yeah, and I think even as we think about because most businesses today aren't just e-commerce, they're multiple channels, right? So they still have their traditional channel and they are growing the e-commerce channel. So this is where the introduction of new metrics has really come into play for CMOs, because there are some companies, like in the OEM world that I serve, they still do trade shows. So they still have all of the components of those in-person events and the marketing activities related to that. But many of them also have digital commerce environments, and they're growing their business through digital commerce. So there are different metrics. You're absolutely right. And Dave brought up the conversion rate. I'm always very careful about conversion rate, just because I do think, depending on the website, there could be a lot of value today in a digital space where people are doing things that don't always generate revenue or a buy or a purchase, right? So I'm always a little bit sensitive to, I want traffic and adoption and people to appreciate what's happening on my website. That's key. And I want my call volume to go down. So I want my website to answer more and more things, and my customer service churn of tactical things that can be answered online to be done online, so I can reduce the cost per transaction. So that those metrics of adoption, cost per transaction, are really things that I can introduce. Obviously, you want revenue in e-commerce, revenue through your e-commerce channel. You want site visits. You want your conversion rate. You want your number of orders. You want number of lines. You want your average order value. There are a lot of metrics here, but the idea is that you want to see the trend, and you want to compare these to your other channel options, because that's going to tell you the adoption rate. So if you have 1,000 customers and still 750 are using your traditional channel and only 250 are moving online, what's different about the 250? What do the margin dollars look like for the 250? What's the average order value of those 250? And how do we get more of the 750 to adopt the digital channel? That's part of a marketer's role, and that will help generate revenue, usually at a lower cost. So those are some of the nuances I'd tie in a digital commerce setting.
Yeah, and those are very interesting nuances, and I think there might be some value in digging some more there for the CMOs that might be in those spaces, and maybe the other CMOs can learn as well. So when you are talking about, what, you should be watching your call volume, I completely agree, because, that's where the e-commerce is really delivering the value. But then you also said that, measure the activities on the website. So I don't know if there are going to be any specific activities that you are going to measure, or is it going to be, okay, I have 750 orders, out of 750, today I am getting, let's say, 300. Tomorrow I want to change it to 200 on the call, and they should move to website. And then average order value as well. I don't know if you are tracking that. What else are you tracking to measure that your call volume is sort of going down and your website activity is going up?
Well, typically what you're doing is you're looking at the revenue. Where is the revenue coming from? Is it coming from the online site or offline? So you have to start there. And then you also have to dig in further. So then within a website, you should have metrics on which customers are placing their orders online versus offline, or which mix of revenue are online and offline. And then you can dive into products. Which products are being purchased online? Which products are being purchased offline? It could tell you if you have a product description problem. Again, if you have if people aren't even searching for a product online, then they either don't know that you have it, or they think that that product needs the traditional experience of talking to a salesperson or an internal customer support person. So you have to look at the differences. What you got to get down to the product level and the customer level. Sometimes there are specific industries that you serve that are adopting digital commerce faster than other industries. So that will teach a marketer, for this industry, they're just not ready for digital. I still need to have these other marketing activities so that I maintain my customer relationships and maintain my volumes. But I also want to make sure that they understand the digital options and the digital tools. So that might be part of my marketing effort as well. But within a digital commerce tool, there are a lot of metrics. I mean, to go through all of them, I'm trying to cover the biggest ones that you can measure. And then you have to dive into Cristiano's point earlier. If you see a drop somewhere, that's where you dig deeper.
Yep.
I always like to talk about what customers aren't doing something, what products aren't being purchased. So sometimes we get so focused on what we are doing, where we are winning, and that's very important. But also, what aren't we winning, or who aren't we winning to? What can we do differently? Is there a strategy? So while that's not a specific metric per se, you can see it in the revenue, and that's how you can dive in. So if you have revenue by product, you have revenue by customer, you can start diving in. If you have search rates and products aren't being purchased, I often talk about that hit rate. We talked about revenue hit rates. I mean, that's where I really think that there's an opportunity for marketers. If people are searching for it and they're not buying it, I might have had a price or an inventory problem. Once I solve that, I got to get people back to my site to know that I've changed something, because a lot of times we don't go back, right? If we didn't have the experience, or the product is always out of stock, we go find it someplace else. So we need to be reminded. So diving into those KPIs is where you find those nuggets, and that's where it can help with the marketing strategy.
Yeah, could not agree more. Thank you so much, Chris, for that. So, Cristiano, I'm coming to you, and obviously, I don't want to push my agenda. I don't know if you guys are going to have any specific topics that you wanted to talk about. So, feel free to touch on those. But I mean, what I'm really looking for is either if you have a story related to KPIs for CMOs, maybe you want to cover that. I'll give you some options, Chris, so you can touch on whatever you want. Or my favorite topic, the horrible KPIs that nobody should be looking at. That. Probably that, or comments over comments. Chris, over to you, whatever you want to cover.
Horrible KPIs are the worst ones, right? They're the broken ones. And
Yeah,
I think, I've heard some great comments that I will say. So, Abu made a comment about price. It's very interesting. Does marketing get to influence price? And if you think about a metric that supports price management, by industry again, right? There's certain product lines you don't have any room, right? If you're a distributor, you have to. Think about professional services, and are we priced too low, too high? And you go back to the equity in the brand equity, and there's a metric, and it's realization. So somebody told me that if you're not getting pushback, you're charging too little. Is that an interesting indirect analytic? But I hear that, and you think about marketing helping set price by demo based on analytics. That's a whole different spin, and that drives revenue. So meaning you're realizing more margin without doing much more, just by tweaking the price, looking for price resistance. So a whole different set of perspectives there. She's checked all the boxes on web. I'll come back to, again, I'm looking at inbound. Okay, or not inbound. I'm sorry, new business versus existing business is really what I said. You mentioned inbound, outbound, but new business, existing. And I think as you go back to the defense of we can't attach marketing to results. I'm sorry, you heard where I started. It's all about attachment. It's all about quantitative. For people listening, that means it's like, I think we did good. No, well, we got to prove that out. And so there's got to be correlations. And so there has to be attachment to marketing effort and results at a macro level. Whether you see it, hey, we did this, we saw a spike. Okay, and I heard the creative, and so we go back to marketing incentives. And part of the reason for that empirical attachment from the beginning to the end is we pay people. That was the unique thing about that system I built for this guy. Everybody got paid. Guess what? It works really well if everybody gets a spiff and there's a focus on analytics and attachment. And again, when you've got web activity over here, you're right. Who owns that stuff? Does marketing get credit? Marketing qualified? Different incentives as you move through the process. And again, remember mine, I said macro, click, I'm in the granularity. I can see a specific conversion result that focuses on, and again, there's incentives tied to that. So I still spin, and I would challenge people to get the connection and don't make it, hold the marketing teams accountable. And when it's a lot of money, and like I said, if it's redirected appropriately, you could see a better result, better ROI. So what else? Like I said, Google PageRank. Nobody said that one. That's one that's in there too. How are we doing? What page visits and views? I mean, so there's another one of those web metrics, right? So I'm not the web guy. I heard customer retention. That is a big one. You heard me say new business versus existing customers. Okay. So marketing, what's our new customer acquisition rate? So that's another one of those metrics. We talked about retention, and you go back to spend analytics per customer. Yeah. Existing marketing, new business marketing. Those are concepts a lot of people don't separate. But if you look at your business, well, how much of it repeats each year? I'm a $100 million company. I'm going to get 40 million out of the base, but I need 60 million in new revenue to hit and I'm going to grow. I need more than 60 million. So understanding that revenue demographic of repeat versus net new every year you need to grow, that's part of it as well. And again, how do you back in? We talked about all these other analytics and that cost effectiveness and being able to say that if I spend this, I'm going to get this type of an ROI. 10 grand gets 100 grand gets, right? You get that. But we have to be able to direct spend to drive to sales goals. It's a lot of networking, but you need to have results tied to activities so you know where to spend more. I think that's it. So I continue to harp on quantitative.
Yeah, Chris, and you are always giving me the juicy ideas here, and that's what I want on this show, right? So you have made the religious comment, especially when you are going to have marketers in the room. Okay, and I'm very, very, very careful when I say this. Okay, pricing. Who should control that? Okay. When I am speaking in front of marketers, obviously marketers. Okay. If I'm speaking in front of CFOs, obviously CFOs. But I am yet to see the accounting and CFOs win the argument for the pricing, to be honest, because pricing is one of the levers that marketers and salespeople want to control. I know where you are coming from, Chris. Obviously, you are going to have your perspective that you need to have holistic control on the pricing, and I'm with you on that. But still, pricing is a very controversial topic, and I wish
pricing.
Yeah.
Incentives. Yeah. Okay.
The pricing of the product.
Pricing. Yeah. No, I agree. Who owns it and who influences it, and how do you substantiate that it should be influenced? Right. Do you think the CFO should set pricing because he wants margin attainment? Right. Maybe he's using one metric to determine pricing, but maybe marketing's perspective on pricing could be more impactful. And so, guess what you do? Black box feedback. Guess what? It worked. Sample it. I mean, I didn't mention marketing science. Everything you've heard me say is I'm a math guy, marketing science, as opposed to, it feels good. We're throwing money. We don't know. Keep throwing it. I'm sorry. I'm just not a believer. Maybe because I'm small business and we have to make the money work. But even in a big model, if people get refined, there's so much more P&L. But to your point, you're right, pricing. And I think you have to substantiate it. Prove your case. Sample it. Again, the marketing guy says, I think we can charge more in this demographic. Well, try it. Oh, guess what? Let's do more. It's all about the data and sampling it and saying, do more of that. Try that, change it, measure it again. Great. We want full throttle, right? Type of situation. So, but you need the data to make those confident decisions. Otherwise, it's, there's a lot of guessing going on out there. I'm sure, like, oh, what did we get? Little facetiousism.
Amazing insights there. Thank you so much, Chris. So Dave, I'm coming to you. And again, my questions are going to be similar, either horrible KPI stories or comments over comments. Dave.
I guess I have comments towards both of Chris's. For Cristiano, I'm a big fan of quantitative, right? I'm not saying that we can't do quantitative. I'm saying that more people should strive to be in the position of the system that you guys built, that you were describing in the beginning. Many times, if there's not the alignment and the money alignment and everything else in order to get everyone to go put all of those individual pieces in, I see that we just kind of end in like a ball of string at the end of that, and we're trying to wind ourselves back and to unwind the string, and we run into some problems. Absolutely. And to Chris Harrington, I appreciate your comment of getting more people online for all of those reasons. When I was thinking about that, not all those many years ago, I worked at a distributor, and I would think somewhere around 40 or 50 times a week we'd get a fax. And the purchase order would be for a fax. We actually had one vendor that used typewriter and the 3 different colors of carbon paper. And so if they ever did verify that we had sent them a purchase order, they did it with a faxed scanned copy of the carbon paper, and then depending upon where we were in the process, we'd get 2 or 3 of those colors back. So I am absolutely all for driving more people online for those purposes. I actually want to talk about some bad KPIs when we talk. And Sam, I'm going to go jump on the grenade. I think this is why Sam continues to invite me back to these shows. But I wanted to go talk about some bad KPIs, and I actually want to go talk about some bad KPIs when we talk about pricing. Right. And when I think about bad KPIs for CMOs, I think about when we get hyper focused. And I know it doesn't happen all that much in the industrial sector, but lots of places, especially e-commerce, are run sales. Right. And so many times we as consumers have kind of been taught over and over again, oh, I'm going to wait for the Black Friday sale, or I'm going to wait for the President's Day sale, the one that just recently passed, right? And so I'm only going to buy when I can get it at 20 or 30 or 50% off. And I think a lot of this came to a head, I don't know, probably 12 or 15 years ago. JCPenney had a new CEO that took over, and their concept was, we're getting rid of coupons, right? We're getting rid of coupons. We're going to an only like all day normal low price. And I think within 6 months, the revenue profit of the entire organization had nearly dropped to the bottom. The CEO was out because they had conditioned people to only go buy when they had their 40 or 50 or 60% off coupon. So I would say when we look at bad KPIs, I especially look at sales or how we are conditioning consumers to buy, and saying, hey, we made a bunch of money on this day when we ran this sale, or hey, we made a bunch of money on that day when we had this coupon. And that is only conditioning people it's devaluing our brand, right? So we're devaluing ourselves. And by devaluing ourselves, we're teaching our customers that, hey, you should only buy from us when we've got a 20% off or a 60% off opportunity.
Yeah, and you have such a great point, I guess, and I think the classic example that you are trying to bring here is going to be Bed Bath and Beyond. They were known for their coupons, okay? And I used to drive to the store every time just for the coupons. And what did we buy at the end? Nothing, okay? So who's measuring the cost of just going to the store? That's my cost, as well as the store's cost, because the cashier is going to be there, and they have to put the inventory, so nobody's measuring that, okay? It's all coupon, drive traffic, that's it, done. Dave, any counter you might have, any follow-up, anything there by any chance?
Absolutely. I will make the Bed Bath & Beyond comment. At one point, my mom got like 60 of those coupons incorrectly in a Sunday newspaper. So we just always had a stack of them driving around in the car. Whenever we were close, we could buy whatever we wanted at 20% off. But exactly to the point we were talking about, Sam.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Dave, for that. Abu, coming over to you. Those three, either bad KPIs or the story, or any comments over comments.
I mean, I'll make a comment on the price. So ultimately, the marketer has to control the price, right? So the marketing, in theory, should know the market, and pricing is not based on what's my cost price plus 20% margin or plus 30% margin, right? The pricing has to be based on what the market is willing to pay for your service. The cost can be $0, but if the product so short or it's so valuable, they're willing to pay a lot more for the service or product, right? So that's my, if you're a CFO-driven pricing, the role of the CFO is to tell you whether your service is going to be profitable or not, right? If it's not profitable, then you have to bring down the cost down, or the market's not willing to bear the price, or you sell something else, right? You'd be in a different business. So in my opinion, ultimately, the marketing, that's their role, right? To understand the market. If they're not being the most important factor in pricing, then I don't know who will be. So that's my thought on the pricing side.
And I'll offer one comment there, and then maybe you have some follow-up there. So Abu is a very smart salesperson, okay? He knows that this show is done for CMOs. Marketers are going to be listening to this. So he's picking sides very smartly right now.
I'll have a different view when you do the CFO KPIs.
Exactly right. But yeah, the pricing and discount argument is always going to be very interesting in general. And obviously, there are a lot of departments that are going to be touched by that. And again, I think the KPIs are going to be different let's say if the marketing is going to control the pricing, then you have very different KPIs because yes, Chris is right that you have to measure the profitability. You cannot just throw away your discounts and coupons and there's some wonder that somehow you are making profit because you are not. So Abu, any other follow-up comments there by any chance?
I mean, just on the discounting, I mean, if you have to discount your services quite a bit to gain new customers, right, means that the market is not willing to pay the price you're charging, right? So that would be my comment. Everything else is also important, right? I mean, the profitability analysis and everything, but that's ultimately to support your pricing decisions and the ability to sell new revenue.
Okay, amazing. Before I do closing advice, we have 5 minutes. Any other open comments by any chance? Anybody? Just open floor. No. Okay, then let's go for closing advice. And now, Chris, did you have something? Closing advice, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, closing advice. I was thinking as we were all talking, we monitor at least over 100 KPIs just in our company at Gen Alpha on the marketing side, right? So we look at our website KPIs, we look at our social KPIs, we look at our email campaign KPIs, we look at our advertising spend KPIs, and we look at any trade show type marketing that we do, right? So a lot of KPIs. It's very difficult to digest them every month over month. The important thing is to see the trends and analyze what significantly changed up or down, and then spend a little time trying to understand what that was. What I will tell you that works for me as a leader is that there's one goal. Marketing is to drive revenue. What is the pipeline that is being added because of our marketing activities? I want to know what that is. And what is the revenue that's generating? Those are the two. And we have goals in our marketing area that are helping to try to drive that. So, yes, you have to monitor a lot of KPIs. You can get really stuck in them, but, look at the trends because otherwise you're just analysis paralysis, and sometimes there isn't enough time for all of that. So that's my advice.
Could not agree more. Great advice. Thank you so much, Chris. Cristiano, closing advice, please.
So even if you're a small organization, you can capture marketing statistics, even if you don't have a CRM where you track from a lead to an op to a sale. On the sale, find a way to place, where did the order come from? Could be that simple. You analyze, where's my revenue coming from? And at a macro level, it's going to help you maybe understand spend. And again, as you grow up, the more mature companies are going to have better systems to track that. But it's a common theme, accountability. And I think that in the pricing conversation, one thing interesting I'll mention is a lot of ERPs don't track where the discounts are. In fact, they'll reduce your top line sales. I had a guy that moved on who says, hey, I was an $11 million business. Now I'm 9 because it's booking net sales. There are applications that will let you book gross sales and get real discreet about where you book the discounts. And that's marketing analytics data, guys.
Yeah.
So keep in mind how you take advantage in that, just like coupons or whatever. But a lot of people lose the visibility. Drive for the visibility. That's all you're hearing from me.
Yeah, could not agree more. Thank you so much for that advice, Chris. Dave, closing advice, please.
Absolutely. I would say pick a handful of top line KPIs that are important to you. As we've all discussed, as Chris was just talking about all of the different channels that they look at, plus all of the different KPIs within all of those channels, it's really easy to get way overwhelmed with everything. So pick items that are important to you. It's probably going to be pipeline. It's probably going to be revenue. It's probably going to be 1 or 2 things to deal with customers. And then as we're talking about, look at trends, right? Make sure that you understand where you are compared to historically, but also where you are compared to where you think you need to be in order to grow as a company.
Okay, amazing advice. Thank you so much, Dave, for that. Abu, closing advice, please.
I mean, I'll have similar to the other panelists, but one thing that we monitor quite a bit is the marketing qualified leads, because all the other sub metrics, help you increase that marketing qualified lead. And monitoring spend, what is causing you to increase those marketing qualified leads, will help you make the right decision on marketing and advertising spend. So.
Yeah, could not agree more. Thank you so much for that advice. So that's it for today, guys. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our digital transformation series, for which we meet every Thursday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you guys are going to be here next week. We are going to come back with another KPI topic on that. No, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in.
Nice job, crew. Good job.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Hey, guys.